Before the start of this video, if you are looking for any of these singles that I talk about today, make sure to check out my TCG Player affiliate link down below in the description. And by clicking on that link, and when you shop for those singles, I do get a small bonus. Another way you can support the channel is by becoming a patron member. There are some great benefits, as you can have your name on each video, you do have early access to videos, giveaways, deck advice and upgrades, and much more when you do join. And if anything else, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. That definitely goes a long way in supporting the channel. Hey, how's it going YouTube? This is Devin with Jurassic Magic, and in today's video I want to discuss a commander that is from the Final Fantasy Commander Precon, and hopefully I don't butcher this name too much, but I am going to be focusing on Y'shtola Knights Blessed. This commander is quite powerful. There's going to be a lot of reasons why people want to make this commander, and it's not even for the mechanic reason, but overall this seems like a pretty powerful commander in Esper color combination, and I would say out of all the Commander Precon decks, at least so far, this is the most unique and the most powerful, and there's a lot of ways we could abuse it, and let's get it started. So first, let's discuss the mechanics of the commander. Y'shtola Knights Blessed for 1 white, blue, and black, so 4 mana total for a cat warlock. It has vigilance, and at the beginning of each end step, if a player lost 4 more life this turn, you draw a card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, Y'shtola deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life. So this commander can act as both a win con and giving you card advantage, and I feel like that's going to be pretty easy because of the second ability. You have a lot of free spells like Fierce Guardianship that are mana value 3 or greater, that also turn into a mini lightning Helix, dealing 2 damage to each opponent and you gaining 2 life. And so just to kind of give you a summary of the video, I am going to first talk about some key synergy points. Also, I'm going to focus on some cards that'll help our commander and ensure that we're oppressing our opponents by stepping on them, or at least Y'shtola. And lastly, I'm going to talk about some win cons that you can pick in the deck. There's some more degenerate ones than others, but I'll be discussing that in a little bit. So first, let's talk about some key synergy pieces. And let me tell you, there are a ton. This almost in a way reminds me of Jin-Gitaxias, the one from March of the Machine, casting mana value 3 or greater spells, as long as they're not creatures. If we are going to talk about the bracket system, this is going to fall in line with 3 and 4. There's going to be a lot of game changers in this list because we're going to kind of go a little bit more degenerate. Some early game interaction if you have a commander on the battlefield, like I mentioned previously. Fierce Guardianship or even Deadly Rollick can be excellent choices. You can protect your commander, also make each opponent lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. The same can be applied for Deadly Rollick if there's a big giant scary threat on the battlefield. You won't have to worry about them as much. Another interaction piece I want to focus on that is highly underrated is Dismember. This can cost 3 mana, but because of the 2 Phyrexian mana symbols, this could just cost 1 mana, and a target creature gets -5/-5 until on a turn. We're using our life as a resource because we are gaining life after all. We don't have to worry about it as much. And that's why some more interaction like Toxic Deluge, or even Anguish Unmaking, you're losing life to remove some targets, but they cost 3 mana, so you're going to be gaining life in the process back. Toxic Deluge is a staple in board wipes, using your life as a resource to get rid of the table. But I would say one of the better options is Void Rend. I love this card, especially in this deck, because if somebody has a nasty like Voja Jaws of the Conclave with a ward ability, this gets around it by this spell can't be countered, and you destroy target non-land permanent, so this is pretty flexible. You can kind of get rid of anything on the battlefield as long as it's not on land. And so of course there's a lot of interaction in this deck. This is going to be a more of a control style deck, and so you'll want to benefit off of casting multiple spells. Lotho Corrupt Sheriff is a great option because whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. This could help speed up the velocity of our deck, mainly to ensure that we're getting more mana to cast more big spells that are 3 mana value or greater that are non-creatures. Another card I thought about was Delny Streetwise Lookout. This is another incredible card in the deck because creatures you control with power 2 or less can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater. That's not really what we're focusing on. It's really that second ability because our commander does have power 2. If an ability of a creature you control with power 2 or less would trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. You could use this and also something like Roaming Throne just to double up on our commander's abilities. Instead of dealing 2 damage, we're dealing 4 damage and we're gaining 4 life. And instead of drawing 1 card, we get to draw 2 cards at each end step. And when we are casting those spells all the time, we might as well get some extra card advantage. I mentioned Jin-Gitaxias previously. This does have a pretty simple effect. We get more card advantage when we're casting those mana value 3 or greater spells. And if we flip it into the Great Synthesis, we're really going to close out the game pretty fast. Other cards like Archmage of Runes or Archmage Emeritus are other great options. Archmage of Runes can reduce the instant sorcery spells you cast by 1. And whenever you cast cast instant or sorcery spells, you draw a card. The same can be applied for Archmage of Emeritus. It has that Magecraft ability. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. So instead of refilling at our end step, we get a refill constantly when we're casting those non-creature spells. So these are some great synergy pieces, but I want to focus more on the life loss aspect of this commander. There's a lot of ways we could absolutely take advantage of that. Some that come to mind are Enduring Tenacity and Veto Thorn of the Duskrose. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So in addition of our opponents losing 2 life when we're casting non-creature spells, we're going to be gaining 2 life, and an opponent is going to lose that much more life. So both of these are great effects. Of course, you can throw in the Sanguine Bond Exquisite Blood combo. You could also use like Bloodthirsty Conqueror. Whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So all 3 of your opponents are going to be losing 2 life. You're going to be gaining 6 life in return. This will help you really keep your life total up. You can also punish card draw. It could be a little salt-inducing. Scrawling Crawler or Shielder of the Apocalypse are each equally important in this deck. Scrawling Crawler, at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player loses 1 life. Little by little, we're trying to chip away at our opponent's life totals on their turns, so that way we get that card advantage. Outside of just casting spells, the same can be applied for Shielder of the Apocalypse. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life and you gain 2 life. So obviously I had to include these in here. We want to make sure our opponents are losing life so that we gain that value. You will also want effects that kind of double dip. One option that I thought about is Memory Plunder. For 4 mana, you may cast a target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. This itself is 4 mana, but not only that, you can cast an instant or sorcery spell from an opponent's graveyard that's mana value 3 or greater. This is really great at endgame because this is at instant speed. If somebody has like a counter spell in their graveyard that you need to use, you can cast this for 4 mana and then use that, and then get the additional bonus of our commander. First off, the Memory Plunder, making each opponent lose 2 life and we gain 2 life, and then when we cast that non-creature spell from our opponent's graveyard, we could do that all over again if its mana value is 3 or greater. I will also say you want to be cautious on how much mana value 3 or greater spells you do have in your deck, because sometimes you might be stuck only casting 1 or 2 spells at a time, and that's why in this video I wanted to go a little bit more degenerate so that you could abuse her ability by casting some free spells or cards that are reduced, like Dig Through Time. It has the Delve mechanic. You could also apply Treasure Cruise. These give you that card advantage all at the Delve cost. Even though this might cost 8 mana, it may only cost 2 blue mana depending on how much cards are in your graveyard and when you exile them. I know I got a little sidetracked there, but I wanted to mention that out clearly. But I did want to go back to the life loss strategy. Cabal Council of Allocation is an excellent choice. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. This could be really taxing on your opponent's life total because a lot of non-creature spells are going to be cast in a game. And not only that, you're really gaining 2 life. Again, you're probably going to be gaining a lot more life than you realize in this deck when you combine all these different strategies. I also love Bloodchief Ascension. At the beginning of each end step, if opponent loses 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Bloodchief Ascension. And whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if it has 3 or more counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. All for 1 mana, and we're already pretty much doing this all the time. This is an effect that is going to be an instant staple. We could drain our opponents for more damage, and it's all based off whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere. Removal is going to happen, discard's going to happen, milling is going to happen. So many different options of putting cards into the graveyard. Bloodchief Ascension is going to pick at our opponent's life total even more. So I did focus on life loss for our opponents, but I wanted to go a different route that is definitely more degenerate, one that a lot of people frown on in Commander specifically, and that's Infect. If you want a way to win the game that's a little bit more unique with your commander, Infect will probably be one of your best options. I mean, yeah, you could drain people left and right, but they do have 40 life, and not only that, your commander is dealing 2 damage whenever you're casting those non-creature spells. It's not life loss, and Infect is in a form of damage, so every time you're casting those non-creature spells, each player will get 2 points of Infect damage. To get the infection process going, you could use cards like Vraska's Fall. It's mana value 3 or greater. Each opponent will get a poison counter. The same can be applied for Infectious Inquiry. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Each opponent gets a poison counter. You could also use some proliferate effects too, so that you could increase the poison counters on your opponents. Thrumming Bird is an excellent choice. When it deals combat damage to a player, you proliferate. If you want like a one-time off effect, if you're going to storm off in the turn, Tainted Strike is going to be an excellent choice. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains infect until in a turn. And if you're casting a lot of non-creature spells that are 3 mana value or greater all at the same time, you could potentially win the game on the spot. I also like Radstorm too. It does have Storm, and you're basically in a control style deck and you proliferate based off the Storm. So if you cast a couple of spells beforehand, you'll get that much more copies of Radstorm on the stat. But why stop at one-time effects when you could give your commander Infect permanently? Grafted Exoskeleton is a perfect choice. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has Infect. So this is just a way we could just equip it to our commander and we could just start infecting people immediately. Another option is Phyresis. You enchant creature has Infect. That's simple enough. But if you do want a repeatable way of giving your commander commander infect, because most people are going to try to remove it, is using glistening oil. You can enchant your commander, enchanted creature as infect, and at the beginning of your upkeep put a -1/-1 counter on an enchanted creature. So this will slowly kill our commander. She does have 4 toughness, so we do have a couple turns with this, but if anything else we could just recast her commander and then just recast this again to give her infect. So this is a good repeatable way when we want to cast it again. Another option very similar to this one is Corrupted Conscience. You can enchant a creature. It's any creature on the battlefield. It doesn't have to be your own commander. You control enchanted creature. Enchanted creature has infect. Most likely you'll want to use this on your commander, but if you don't, if somebody has a bigger threat on the battlefield, you could just enchant that creature and it'll be on your side. So obviously there are some options to give our commander infect, but even if we give 1 poison counter to each of our opponents, Inexorable Tide is another great include. Whenever you cast a spell, you proliferate. We are in a Spellslinger theme. If each of our opponents have 1 poison counter, all we have to do is really just cast 9 more spells, and that's going to be very easy to do in this kind of deck specifically. So if you did want to go more of the infect route, I did want to give you some options there, but that is going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this commander and how do you plan on building it. I know there's a lot of different ways to do so. I just wanted to point out the fun way of infect that a lot of people cherish, wink wink. But overall, this set looks pretty interesting. I'm excited to see what more spoilers come about. And obviously this is from the pre-con product. This has a whole deck built around it. I just wanted to give you some ideas, maybe even before the pre-con spoils, or if you just wanted to build it from scratch completely. So if you can, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And with that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.